Hey guys, how's it going? It's Sophie Lloyd here. In this Techniques edition of Bulletproof rock guitar, I'll demonstrate and show you how to play 8 of the most powerful, expressive techniques for modern rock guitarists. Most importantly, we'll focus on bulletproof approaches for applying and combining these techniques in a musical context. We'll work on soloing approaches using major and pentatonic scales with bends, vibratos, slides, hammer-ons and pull-offs, 3 notes per string scale runs, 2-handed tapping, sweep picking and more. Everything is tabbed and synced to the video, so you can slow down or loop any of the video lessons to learn at your own pace. So grab your guitar and let's rock! The minor pentatonic scale is probably my favourite scale of all time, and that is because from beginners to pros, it is the very first building block to creating beautiful solos. It is made up of 5 notes, hence the name pent, meaning 5, and these notes are the root, the flat third, the 4th, the 5th, and the flat 7th. You'll notice the 2nd and the 6th have been removed. This is because these are the 2 notes in the scale which sometimes clash a little bit and maybe not sound quite so sweet. So the great thing about the minor pentatonic scale is that we know that it'll definitely sound great over pretty much any minor chord progression, and therefore this makes it one of the most widely used scales in music. There are 5 different positions of the pentatonic scale across the neck that are super important to know, especially if you really want to unlock the fretboard to the full potential. However, right now we're just going to focus on the first position of the pentatonic. You want to get super comfortable with each of these shapes individually and be able to use them really effectively and solo with it before moving on to the next shape, and you can just build it up and build it up until you've got the pentatonic all over the neck. We'll go through the first position in A minor. This is how it's played. Now, as we play through this scale, try to really think about the shape as a whole rather than just the particular frets that it's on in this demonstration. Knowing the shape well will make it a lot easier to use in different keys. And you can do this, sometimes it helps to think about what fingers you're using on each degree of the scale rather than the frets itself. So this will help you see how it really fits into your hand. For example, I'm using my first finger and my pinky here on this sort of 3 fret gap, and then here. So wherever there's a 3 fret gap, I'm using my first finger and my pinky, and whenever there's like the sort of 2 fret gap, I'm using my first and my third, so I can see how that kind of fits into my hand so that when I move it around, I'll know that that position is always the same. So no matter where I play it, that shape will always stay the same. Now let's try it in a few different keys together to make sure that we've really got the hang of that shape. So let's try it again. Let's just play through it in A just to make sure that we've got it. Now let's try it in B, which is on the 7th fret. Now let's try it in E on the 12th fret. And finally, let's give it a go in F sharp, which is on the 2nd fret here. So take some time to get really, really comfortable with that shape and learn it sort of all over the neck, making sure, like I said, you're really focusing on the shape rather than just the particular frets. And there you go. You have just learned one of the most important things that you can know on guitar. So the first thing to think about when we're using the pentatonic to start soloing is the use of target notes. Arguably, the most important note in any scale is the root note, also called the tonic. And it's very important to know where they are in each scale box. So there may be 2 or 3 in one box. So as we're in A minor, we're looking for the very first note in the scale, which is the A notes. And you'll be able to find them here on the 5th fret of the low E string, here on the 7th fret of the D string, and here on the 5th fret of the high E string. So why are these root notes so important? Basically, these notes will be our target or landing notes, which is a note that a lot of licks will resolve to. They're basically kind of like a base for all of the notes to come back to after doing, a little bit of improvisation and have a little rest before venturing out again. For example, we've got, if I play a lick, I'm ending it on the root note. So it's just a note that we know is going to sound good hanging over some chords. Another target note which we might want to think about using is the flat third. This is a note that really, really highlights the minor tonality of the scale, as it is part of the A minor triad. So this will sound great when we're landing on it as well. These are here on the 8th fret of the low E string, here on the 5th fret of the G string, and here on the 8th fret of the high E string, I think. Now, we're just going to practice playing and improvising in the first position of the scale, trying to land on either the root or the flat third each time. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is demonstrate a little solo for you guys. This track is at around 111 BPM, and the chords that we're going to be playing over are all in A minor, which is what we've just been learning. They are A, C, G, and D. And that's just going to repeat. So what I'm going to do is just play some very simple licks in the first position of the A minor, and make sure you're looking out for the landing notes, which I was talking about, where I end licks on the root and the flat third, and also just sort of get some ideas of how you might go about using that first position of the minor pentatonic scale to create some licks and do a little bit of improvisation. So here we go, and I'll explain what I'm doing later as well. So what I was basically doing with that improvisation was what I was talking about with the target note. So any sort of lick I was playing, I was trying to land on the root, so I was using this note quite a lot to land on, as I think that's just one, it's right in the middle, it's one that sounds really good, and there's a lot of really cool licks around this area. So there's a lot, because it's, just got, it's a very symmetrical pattern on both of the strings. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. You can do some, cool bends, and you can use the flat third there as well to end some licks on, which sounds really cool. And you get that, cool kind of bluesy sound as well. And I also played some hammer-on and pull-off licks from the top. combining them with that little bend as well and ending it on that root note. Again, like I said, there's also a root note here on the top string. So at one point I went down and then did a little string skip back up to that root note there, or the flat third there. And then also we went, you know, down to the bottom sometimes, down to our root note here on the A on the 5th fret. And we're kind of using that pattern to climb up the scale using this little hammer-on pull-off thing. That pattern comes into my playing and my soloing quite a lot. And that lands us again back on the root note there. So yeah, as I'm playing, I'm just really thinking about what notes sounds really, really good to hang on and to end a lick and make it feel complete. Like, you know, music is like a language, and you want to end the sentence that you're, you know, playing in a really, really good place that feels like it's done. The listener knows, okay, we're ready to go on to the next lick now, and you go on and you start telling, you know, start saying a new sentence. So that's kind of what I was doing in that improvisation. Okay, so now let's talk about some techniques that we can use within the pentatonic scale. The most common places to string bend in the pentatonic scale is mainly on the top 3 strings. And these are a whole tone beyond on the higher note of the G string, a whole note beyond on the higher note of the B string, which in this example is on the 8th fret, and a whole tone beyond on the higher fret of the, on the higher note, sorry, of the high E string. Again, in this example, it's on the 8th fret. Now, I'm using the term higher note rather than just saying the fret number again, so that you'll, again, start to think about it in terms of shape rather than just the particular frets in this demonstration. This way, again, it'll be way easier to move around into different keys as you'll understand where to bend in the actual shape. So when bending, the motion is coming from your wrist. So it's kind of similar as if you were to use when you're like twisting a doorknob. So it's kind of like this type of motion here. Now you can use your fingers below if we're bending. So in this case, it would be the middle and index finger to help you lift up the bend. So you can stack them quite closely behind the ring finger, and this will really help you push the note up, having that bit of extra strength. Make sure you're not catching the string below as well, and there's no extra strings ringing out. So try to, you know, keep your palm mutes down a little bit. And you can also use the underside of your ring finger here just to lie flat lightly against the strings below. So if you are catching one of the strings underneath, like it's getting caught under your ring finger or something, just try and make sure that kind of scoop the notes downwards, almost as if you're pushing it into the fretboard a little bit, so that this string below, in this example, the D string, is sort of being carried above on your fingertip. Now, when you're bending on the top 2 strings, we definitely want to be bending up. However, on the 3rd string, you do have a choice whether you feel more comfortable bending up or down, or you can bend like this. So have a little play and see which one you prefer. When you are bending down, you might find it helpful to move your finger up a little bit, so you're doing it a little bit more on the pad on the side of your finger, just there. And then on the bottom 3 strings, we're definitely going to be bending down. Now, when you're practicing bending, we can play the notes that we're trying to get to as a reference to check it. So as I said, for example, on the G string, we're bending a whole tone away, which is 2 frets up. 1, 2. So we play this note, and then we bend this note up until we can hear that it matches that sound. So this is a good way to practice your bending. If you find that you are a little sharp or flat, then just adjust the bend slightly and keep practicing it until it feels right and you've kind of got a feel for it as well. Now, something really cool to do with bending is double stop bends. A double stop is basically when we play two strings at the same time, such as this. So therefore, a double stop bend is when we're playing two notes at the same time, but we are actually bending the lower one while the top one rings out. Now in this, we don't want to bend our index finger at all. And again, we can use our middle finger here to support that bend that we're doing with our third finger. And the main places you would want to do this in this particular scale is again here on the third string with your index finger on the 5th fret. And you can hear that they're actually kind of ringing out the same tone. So it makes this really, really cool sounds. And you can either pick them at the same time, like I've been doing, or you can bend and release, picking them alternately, but letting the notes kind of bleed into each other. Which has this cool kind of, country effect to it. Another option is staying here, but instead of the 5th fret with your index finger, we're going to be playing the 8th fret of the B string with our pinky finger, and that makes this sort of sound. So again, very, very country. It's really, really cool sound there. I like doing that one a lot. And finally, we can do it on the B string with our pinky finger on the 8th fret. And that sounds really cool as well. So that's a nice little bluesy country thing that you can add into your playing. Now, although these are the most common places to bend, you're obviously not just limited to these bends I've shown you here. This is just a good starting point for you. And when you're ready, you can then start experimenting with bending in different places. Now, although these are the most common places to bend, you're obviously not limited to the bends that I've shown you just here in these examples. This is just a good starting point for you. And when you're ready, you can start experimenting with bending different notes in the scale as well. Okay, now let's try one of my favorite techniques, legato using hammer-ons and pull-offs. So this is like my go-to technique. It is all over my playing, and I'm sure you will love it too. So with a hammer-on, we're basically going to hold one note down, pick that note, then use one of our other fingers to quite forcefully slap or hammer onto a note further up the neck with the pad of the finger. For example, so here I'm holding the note down with my index finger and I'm using my third finger to quite forcefully slap that note down. The key to this is getting the volume to be the same of that of a picked note. Let's try with some other fingers. Now, a pull-off is basically the reverse of this, where we pick the higher note, then kind of scoop the finger downwards in a hooking motion to pull it off so that the note below rings out. Again, the idea is to get them the same volume of the picked note. Now, you may want to, when you're doing this on the slightly lower strings, you may want to lay your index finger down slightly so it's kind of lightly resting on the B and the E string so that you are muting these. Otherwise, you might find that your third finger kind of catches the strings below and it doesn't sound super clean. So now let's play through the minor pentatonic scale using hammer-ons on the way down and pull-offs on the way up. Now let's do pull-offs. A really good exercise to practice hammer-ons and pull-offs is a chromatic run. So forget that scale for a second. We're going to just do a chromatic scale starting on the 1st fret, basically. We're going to pick this note and then hammer on 2, 3, and 4 with our separate fingers. Then we're going to move on to the next string, and so on. So So when you're doing this, after you've played a note, try to lift that finger off the fretboard so that they are free to move on to the next string when needed. So we really only want one finger on the fretboard at any given time. Now we can do this with pull-offs as well, going down. So let's go 1 fret up, just to mix it up. This is going to build some finger independence, and you'll really be able to sort of get a hang. You'll be able to hear if your muting sounds good and everything like that, because it's really isolating your technique. This exercise is also good as it can be used to practice alternate picking as well, if that's something you need to work on, such as. So it's a very versatile exercise to kind of sync up both of the hands, build finger strength and finger independence, and like I said, really isolate that technique. Okay, so now we've kind of got the hang of hammer-ons and pull-offs. We are going to combine them to make a trill, which is this. So we're just picking once, hammering on, and pulling off straight away. So let's try this up the pentatonic scale. For a good exercise to practice trills, we're going to kind of go back to a variation of that chromatic exercise, but we're just going to stay on one spot. So for example, the fifth fret, so we'll just stay here. And basically what we're going to do is trill on one note, and we're going to use each of our fingers to do this. This is a bit of a workout, guys, so stick with me. So we're going to hold our index finger on the 5th fret here, and then firstly we're going to use our middle finger and basically keep going as long as we can until the note dies or we get too much lactic acid build-up in our hand. Just try to make sure that it's sounding clean, clear, and as loud as possible. Okay, so now once we've comfortable with that finger, we're going to move on to our 3rd finger. Now our pinky. And you want to just keep that going for as long as you can. And then once you've got that, you're going to hold your middle finger down and hammer on with your 3rd finger. This is where it gets tricky. Now your pinky. And now the toughest one, we're going to hold our 3rd finger down and hammer on with just our pinky. That sounds weird, as you can hear. I probably need to work on that one a little bit as well. So now that we've got a couple of techniques under our belt, let's try that improvisation again. Okay, so this next track is actually modeled off one of my own songs, After Insanity. It starts on, well, we're in A minor again. It starts on the A chord. And it's sort of this type of rhythm. So after A, we move to G, then to D, and then back to the root of A. And it goes around this twice, and then we sort of go to this chorus section, which has this cool kind of slidey thing. So what we're doing there is A again, sliding up to C, and then G, sliding up to C. And then we go back and do this little muty thing, which is kind of cool in there as well. So that's what I'm going to be playing over. So let's give it a go. So what I did in that track was I was basically using that string bending technique I was talking about. I was doing quite a lot of those kind of double stop bends. Again, landing on our target notes, as we were talking about earlier, landing on the root quite a lot. We were doing a lot of pull-offs. So that had a little trill in it as well there. And then, as well as using the first position of the minor pentatonic, I was going up into the second position, and at the very end there, I kind of went into the fourth position as well. Again, using those bends up there as well. I'm not sure exactly what I played, but you can go back and look at the tab there to see kind of some of the runs I did to move between the positions smoothly. And also you can, have a little listen to the backing track and try yourself to put some of those bends into it. Try to include, I love doing them here. I think that's always just like a really cool place. So maybe start with that one and then gradually increase so that you're kind of doing them on different strings, and as you get more comfortable, try and add in some more positions of that minor pentatonic until you're, flowing all over the place, basically. So yeah, that's pretty much what I did in that demo. Okay, so the pentatonic scale is already sounding awesome, just as it is. But there are a few things that we can do in this first position here to make it even more interesting. And that's adding a few more note options while staying in the basic first position shape. So the first note we're going to add is the flat 5, which is also known as the blues note, as it is used in a lot of blues improvisation. It lives here on the 8th fret of the G string. There. And also here on the 6th fret of the A string, so it's in between there. So we've got that cool little chromatic run up the A string. So let's just quickly play through that pentatonic scale, adding in those blues notes. Now, what's important to mention about this note is that it is a passing note, which means we don't really want to land on it like we would a root note or a flat third or something. It is just one to use in passing to add a little bit of colour to our licks, maybe with like a slide or a little bend. So you're just sort of briefly passing it in your lick. Now, there is just a few more notes that I want you to have a think about, which I believe really ups the pentatonic game. So we're going to concentrate on just the top 3 strings here. And these notes that we want to add are the flat 6th and the 2nd. These are really going to highlight the Aeolian mode, which you may also know as the natural minor, but you don't need to worry too much about that sort of theory for now. Just get these notes in your head and it'll at least sound like you know what you're doing. So these notes live here, the 2nd on the 7th fret of the E string. And we've also got a 2nd here on the 4th fret of the G string. And we have a flat 6th, which is here on the 6th fret of the B string. So just playing those top 3 notes. Again, just like before, try and get that shape into your head. Look for the pattern. So we've got the same fingerings on the G and the B string. It just goes up 1 fret, but we've got, 1, 2, 4 in fingerings. And then on the high E string, we're just changing to our 3rd finger. So try and get that pattern in your head. So now let's just play the full pentatonic scale with these 3 notes added on the top 3 strings. So you can see that this gives the scale generally a much more minor, almost darker feel than just the standard pentatonic, because we've actually brought the notes in that we took out before, the second and the flat sixth. Again, these are more just passing notes. We don't want to hang out them for too long. They're just sort of used to add a little bit of colour to the scale. Kind of like that. So now let's try improvising using everything that we've learned so far. So in this demonstration, I'm going to be playing over an E minor backing track. So we're changing the key here from A to E. So we're going to be up here on the 12th fret. And in the backing, we're starting with like this sort of verse section, which is a chorus. Which is E to G to D to A. And the second time round, we just go E to G to A, and we hang on A for a bit. And this plays twice, and then we've got this little pre-chorus section where we go into this palm muting thing. So E, G, A, and then back to G, and then this little lick here. And then that repeats, and when we're on the A, we're hanging on that for 2 bars to lead us into the chorus. The chorus starts on a G. We've got this little passing bit to an F sharp, to an E. And we've got a little like hammer-on thing there on the 3rd fret. And then we go to the 5th fret for an A chord again, G, and then we've got our E chord. And then that repeats. And that is our backing track. So yeah, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be up here on the 12th fret, playing mainly with the first position of the minor pentatonic, but make sure to keep an extra eye out for some of those extra notes, such as the flat sixth, the second, and the blues note, the flat 5 as well. Let's give it a go. Okay, so what I was thinking about while I was improvising over that was I was kind of using the E minor pentatonic as my bass. So I was really thinking about that first position shape here. So I know that if I ever get lost or I'm not sure what I'm doing, I know I can always go back to that first position minor pentatonic and I'll be back in a space where I know what I'm doing. And then I was using, you know, the flat sixth and the seconds there to do quite a few little runs down the kind of scale a bit. So I was doing a lot of this. And then quite a few cyclic runs as well, which is basically kind of where you're playing the same thing pretty much over and over again. So it makes this little cyclic pattern. And that's using our hammer-on and pull-off legato that we were working on earlier as well. But we're, instead of just, you know, hammering onto one note, we're hammering onto two and then pulling off two. That's something that I think is really cool. I use that like a lot in my playing. And I was also trying to touch on the flat five quite a bit, doing these little slides or little bends, little semitone bends there. And also, I think I once went down here using this little chromatic run on the A string. And then again landed on our target note, which was the E string here. Occasionally I went up to some different positions of the E minor pentatonic scale. I think I made it all the way up to here, which is the fourth position. And I sort of just tried to use slides, use hammer-ons and pull-offs to climb up that scale quite effectively. Again, if you're not sure, you can always go back and look at the tabs to see exactly how I, you know, sort of put together those runs so that you can emulate that in your playing as well. But using a lot of, you know, those slides, hammer-on techniques, legato stuff, bends, is really, really going to help you move through those runs quite smoothly, so you can really take over that fretboard. So yeah, that's pretty much what I was doing in that demo. So yeah, let's move on to the next thing. So we already know that the minor pentatonic sounds good, but now we're going to be looking at a brand new scale, which is the major scale, but in a slightly different way to what you might be used to. We're going to be looking at the first position of the 3 notes per string major scale and how to use this modally to add speed and fluidity to your solos. I always use this scale in my playing as I find it's really, really good for creating long, complicated sounding runs without too much thinking. So the major scale is made up of 8 notes, and you may have traditionally seen it being played like this. I'm going to be playing it in C major. So that's a great way to play it. It's definitely worth learning, but you can see that it only covers a very, you know, small portion of the fretboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these exact notes, which are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, and put 3 of them on each string, and we get this shape right here. And you can see there that that covers quite a lot more of the fretboard. So already we're in a very good position to start thinking about some long, complicated runs. Again, just like I did with the pentatonic, I want you to really, really focus on the shape of the scale rather than the exact frets here. So if we take a closer look at it, firstly, we can see that it is a very, very symmetrical scale. You'll notice there is always 3 notes on each string, hence the name 3 notes per string. And also, if you look at the shape and break it down into groupings of 2 strings, you'll notice that they're actually the same shape and fingerings per 2 strings. So if we take the E and the A string, we have got, you know, the same shape on both of them. And then if we take the 2 middle strings, the D and the G, again, that's the same shape. And finally, the B and the E, we've got the same fingering. So it's quite helpful to break that up into groups of 2 strings and practice it in that way. Memorizing these repetitive groupings makes it a lot easier to remember and build muscle memory for fast runs, like this. Memorizing these repetitive groupings make it a lot easier to build muscle memory for fast runs in the future, and that's what we're going to be discussing in the next lesson. Okay, so as I mentioned in the previous lesson, a great thing to do with these 3 notes per strings are fast legato runs such as this. So if we think back to one of the earlier lessons where we were looking at the hammer on and pull off technique, we're basically going to be taking these and extending the runs. So we're picking the string once and hammering on the remaining 2 notes. This is a lot less work for your picking hand, so you'll actually be able to get to speeds that you might not have been able to just using alternate picking. Rhythm-wise, a really great place to start with this scale is with triplets or sextuplets, which is either 3 or 6 notes per beat. For example, triplet, triplet, triplet. As the scale is 3 notes per string, it'll fit really, really nicely into these rhythms. And once you've mastered these, it is also worth practicing it in 16th notes and some other rhythms, but just get really, really comfortable with the shape first, as this can be a little bit mind-boggling. One run I really, really like to do in this position is add this little turnaround in the middle. And this is a very, very simple thing you can do that makes the run sound super, super cool without really adding any more work for you. So it sounds like this. So we're basically playing up the scale, but yeah, we've got that little turnaround in the middle. So we're going to just play up the scale until we get to the G string. Using hammer-ons, and then we're going to go back to the D string, so just up 1 string, and then continue the scale down to the E string. And then maybe to finish, we can slide to the root note and add some vibrato. So if I play that slowly, it sounds like this. When you're doing these fast runs, you might find that you want to shift your hand position slightly throughout. A more classical position with your thumb in the middle of the neck at the back with your wrist sticking out a bit will be best for the lower notes, especially when there's quite big stretches. And then as your hand comes up to the higher notes, you can shift into that more blues position again with your thumb poking out of the top here. And then you can, shift into some sort of really cool blues lick or something. So you can see there my hand shifted from that to that at the top. So now let's try improvising this scale using a C major backing track. Okay, so for this demonstration, we're going to be in C major, and I'm going to start, the backing track starts with a C major chord. And we're going to do the full chord as well, so it's not just the power chord, we've got the full chord in there. And then we're going to E minor, down to D minor, and then up to F major. So that's the pretty little verse section, and then the distortion builds, we've got a little bit of a build, and then we get into the chorus section, which starts with our A note, down to a G, to a C, and to an F. So that is the chord progression that is happening underneath. Now what I'm going to be playing in this improvisation is I'm going to be using exactly what we just talked about in those lessons. I'm going to be using the 3 notes per string C major scale. I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to be using it in fast runs using legato, so our fast hammer-on and pull-off runs. And I'm going to be using a couple of different positions of that major scale, and I'm also going to be incorporating it with the A minor pentatonic, but we'll talk more about that in the next lesson. In this demonstration, I was mainly sticking to the sort of the first position of the 3 notes per string minor pentatonic. And you can tell I was going back and climbing up this scale quite a lot because I really wanted to see how you can utilize that in your playing and how it sounds really, really cool. So I was doing a lot of those runs, the hammer-on runs that we learnt earlier. Occasionally I was extending that into the second position of the 3 notes per string scale as well. So that's sort of where there is actually 7 positions of the 3 notes per string scale. Yeah, again, you don't need to worry too much about them. Make sure you're really, really comfortable with one before moving on and learning another. But I was dipping into some of those a little bit as well. Something else I was doing was I was going back to the A minor pentatonic scale. So I was taking special note of kind of where I was landing when I was doing these fast runs. So I knew which position I was in of the minor pentatonic scale. So when I do this fast run, I know that I'm in the 3rd position here. And I can then use those positions to go into some more kind of bluesy licks. And sometimes I would kind of climb the minor pentatonic scale up, or I would do a fast thing up to here. And then we're back in the 1st position of the minor pentatonic scale, just an octave higher from where we were playing it in the first few lessons. And that's why I was doing some of the things we were talking about with adding those little extra notes, the 2nd and the flat 6th. I was doing a few of those runs. And then going back to thinking about that 3 notes per string C major scale. But again, we'll talk about how you can relate it to the minor pentatonic in the next lesson. So yeah, that was pretty much what I was thinking about in that solo. Again, if you wanted to go and check out the tabs for that, you can have a little play along to the backing track. You can start super slow, just literally kind of playing up the scale. You don't need to be doing these super fast runs straight away. You can also just think about, improvising within that scale. You don't need to be thinking about it in terms of these long runs. That's just how I personally like to use it. So have a little play around to the backing track, see if you can come up with some cool licks. Now, that example was playing the C major scale over a C major progression. And obviously that's great and that works perfectly, but we're rockers and it's not that often that a killer rock song is in a major key. They're more often actually in a minor key. So we need to find a way to be able to access these fast runs over whatever song we're playing in, whether it's in a major or a minor key. For this, we've got to get into theory a little bit and talk about relative major and minors. Basically, every major scale has a relative minor and vice versa. These scales are actually related as they are made up of the exact same notes. It's just the order of these notes that change. But the order doesn't actually matter when we're soloing. So if we take C major, for example, there's no sharps or flats in C major, so the notes here are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And then if we take its relative minor, which is A minor, the notes are exactly the same. They are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There are no sharps or flats in that scale either. So the only thing that's changed there is the order. So a quick way to find the relative major when you're in a minor key without really knowing or worrying too much about theory is just to count 3 frets up. So say we're playing a song in A minor. To find the relative major, we just go to the A note on the 6th string, and we just count up 3 frets. So on the A note here, on the 5th fret, we count up 1, 2, 3. And then we are here on the C note, which will be our relative major. And this works no matter what key we're in. So for example, if we're in G minor, so we know we can play the G minor pentatonic, we can count up 1, 2, 3. And here we know we can play the B flat major scale, as that is the relative major to G minor. So if I just, for example, ring out the A string here, and I play the C major scale over the top, you'll hear that it sounds really good and it works well. So you can hear there's that minor tonality, although we're playing the C major scale. So all we need to remember when we're doing this is, although that we are technically playing the major shape, in this example, the C major shape, we are still tonally in A minor. So our landing notes will have to reflect this, that we're in A minor. So we'll be aiming to end licks on A notes, which is still the root of what we're playing. Or maybe the flat third again, which would be the C in this example. So exactly what we were talking about in our target note lesson. So therefore, while playing over an A minor progression, we might start in the first position of the minor pentatonic. Then we decide we want to show off and do a cool fast run. So we can move to the C major 3 notes per string scale and do a little run up that. And then we find ourselves here in the third position of the A minor scale, so we can do a little bluesy run in that, and then maybe go up to the fourth position as well. So it's basically just seeing how all of these can fit together like that. So now let's give this a go in context with a backing track. Okay, so for this backing track, I'm going to be playing over A minor. And we're going to be starting here on this little like palm mute pattern on the A note. Then we're going to be doing a hang on the C, a hang on the E, and then back to C. And then the little palm mute pattern on our A chord again. And that's going to go twice, and then we go into our little chorus section, and we're starting on a C note here, to a D, to an A. So there we've just got a little step past the B chord to the C again, and we're basically repeating. So that little chorus section sounds like this. And while I'm playing over this backing track, I want you to pay careful attention over what I'm doing. So I'm going to be starting in sort of the A minor pentatonic, playing some blues licks there. And then I'm going to be transitioning into a fast run into the C major 3 notes per string scale that we were learning. And I'm going to kind of be switching back and forth between these two. So try and pay careful attention as to where I am, try and understand which position of the minor pentatonic I'm in. So if I do a run, I'm now here in the fourth position of the minor pentatonic, so I'm going to be doing some blues licks there, and so on. And make sure you're paying attention to where my target notes are. So even though we can think about it as the C major scale, my target notes are still that of A minor. They're still A and maybe the flat third, which is C. So look out for that, and let's give it a go. Okay, so as you could see, in that one, I started with some licks in the first position of the minor pentatonic scale. using some of those bends and double stops that we talked about earlier. And then I made my way down it. So I'm on the 6th string, ready to go on that fast run. So then I move up to the C major 3 notes per string run, and I do a run directly there. And then I find myself up here in the 4th position of the minor pentatonic, do a few licks there. Again, if you want to know sort of exactly what I play, it'd be good to go back and look at the tab. I can't remember exactly what I did. So if you heard anything you like, definitely go back and check that out, and you can slow it down and work out exactly what I was doing. But quite often I sort of went up here, which was the octave of the 1st position as well. Back to the 3 notes per string scale. So I'm kind of thinking within the 2 scales. So my thinking will switch between, okay, I'm in this 3 notes per string fast scale where I'm going to be doing these speedy runs, and now I'm in the this position of the minor pentatonic, and I can hear where I can maybe do some bluesy runs or something there. So the key to this is just knowing where you are. So I know when I'm in my 1st position, I know here on wherever my pinky lands is where that C major run will start. And I know when I end that run that I'm definitely going to be ending in the 4th position, like I said. So we can switch that between different keys then, because we're looking at the kind of shapes that we're using and how it's all connected over the fretboard. That's what we're aiming to do there. So yeah, have a little play to the backing track. See if you can sort of do something similar and wrap your head around that. You can start really, really slowly, just carefully playing through the 1st position of the minor pentatonic. Just even if you're literally just playing the scale up and down. So you're kind of understanding how they connect together and getting that into your head. Also on in the backing track where we have those hanging C notes in the verse section, because they're C notes, that's an excellent time to go to the C major 3 notes per string thing as well and play that, because that will really highlight that C in the backing track too. Two-handed tapping is a very crucial tool for modern guitar players. It allows shapes with large stretches to be played in a smooth and fast fashion. Two-handed tapping basically involves hammering on a note with the picking hand and pulling it off to a lower note played with the fretting hand, which is often then followed by a hammer-on or pull-off with the fretting hand. So the first thing we want to think about when we're tapping is, where do we put the pick? Because we're obviously using our fingers. I personally hold it out of the way just between my first finger and my thumb, just like that. So that way my middle finger is available for the tapping. I personally find this the easiest and most comfortable place to hold it, as it's super easy to get to, and it's very easily accessible for me to go straight back to picking afterwards. I know some people, I think, like to hold it sort of in the fold of their knuckle like that. So have a little experiment, see which you like best, and do whatever feels most comfortable for you. One thing I would say is just try not to hold the pick too hard with too much tension. You want to keep your hand really, really relaxed. If you're holding it like this, you want to just hold it kind of similar to how you would hold like a note of money on a windy day. Not like a hurricane or anything, but just like a light breeze, you know? So now we want to use the middle finger to tap with, as that is our strongest finger, so we will have the most power behind the tap with it. So we're going to start by trying a simple tapping lick in G minor, using the notes from the G minor pentatonic. So first, let's get our fretting hand into position, with our index finger here on the 3rd fret of the high E string, and our pinky finger here on the 6th fret. And to start with, we're just going to practice hammering on with our middle finger onto the 10th fret. You want to be using the pad of your finger for this, and not like right at the tip or anything, and not like super low on the pad, just sort of right here, just somewhere in between. You want to put quite a bit of force behind it. Make sure that the note is really, really, really ringing out, so that it's the same volume as a note would be if it were picked, just like when we were, doing hammer-ons and pull-off with our fretting hand. So we want to lift that finger up and slap it down. Don't worry about the pull off for now. If you're not doing so already, it is helpful to kind of anchor down your tapping hand a bit, so it's not just like floating around somewhere on the guitar. So I personally do this by resting my arm on the guitar in a comfortable position, and then placing part of my forearm and kind of the lower heel of my wrist down onto the strings like this. We're not going to press too hard or you get this horrible like string noise there. So we just want to rest it lightly enough so that it's muting the lower strings and preventing them from ringing out. And also then our arm is in a comfortable position for the tapping as well. So now we've kind of got the hang of the hammer on, we're going to be looking at the pull off. So we've just hammered on. Now we're going to kind of hook our middle finger up so that the pad of the string, the pad of your finger pulls against the string and makes it ring out, just like we do with the fretting hand when we pull off. So we hammer on and almost kind of scoop the finger up. Some guitarists prefer to pull off in a downwards fashion like this, which is totally fine. I personally find the upstroke easier. Again, just have a little play and see which one you prefer and which one's most comfortable for you. So you've got an option there. You might find your middle finger is getting a bit sore or even developing a blister or a callus if you practice for like too long. But don't worry, that is totally normal and it does go away within a week. So it's worth the pain, I promise. So practice doing this for a while until the technique feels comfortable and it's not sounding muffled. If it is sounding a bit muffled, just release your hands, shake them out to release any tension. Make sure you have a really good amount of power behind your tap and that you're really slapping it down. Also make sure that you're really kind of aiming the tap exactly in the middle of the two fret wires. You don't want to be touching the fret wires or anything, you want to be right in the middle, and you're also keeping your fretting hand in the right position as well. And you're just, not holding too much tension. Now, when you feel comfortable with that, we're going to try also adding the pull off with the fretted hand. Now, as we're doing a cyclic pattern here, you'll kind of have to coordinate your fingers a bit so that you're putting your pinky finger back down on the 8th fret at exactly the same time, or maybe like a millisecond after that you tap onto the 12th fret, so that it's ready for you to pull off to. So you can see there that my middle finger and my pinkies are kind of in sync when they're hammering onto the fretboard. You can also actually mute the B string here with your index finger of your fretting hand too. We want to fret the note more on the pad of the finger and slightly hang it over so that the tip is resting on the side of the B string. So you can see here it's kind of muting it there as the tip's kind of hanging off and touching the B string. Again, you're not applying any pressure or like fretting the B string in any way. You're just letting the pads touch it to prevent it ringing out, and this will help with your muting as well. Practice this technique slowly at first, and then once you've got that coordination, speed it up a bit. So when you're comfortable with that, maybe try mixing up the order of the notes as well. So you're tapping onto the 10th fret, pulling off to the 3rd, and then hammering on to the 5th. So just experiment with some different orders of notes there. I'd definitely recommend practicing this with a metronome or maybe a backing track with a strong drum beat or something to make sure all of your notes are of equal length and you're maintaining a good consistent volume throughout your playing. So in this backing track, we're going to be in the key of G minor. We're going to be starting on the G chord, doing that little palm mute rhythm there. Then we're going to move to the B flat chord, moving down to the F, and then to a C. So So that is going to repeat through the whole backing track. So just the 4 chords there. And when I'm playing over it, I want you to try and notice what I'm doing. So I'm going to be thinking in the key of G minor, as I said, in the minor pentatonic position. So that's sort of probably where I'll start, in that first position, hang out a bit there. And then when it comes to tapping, I'm going to be using sort of the tapping run that we just learned. That kind of, that little thing there. I might incorporate a little bit of movement as well into that. I may also touch on that 3 notes per string stuff that we learnt in the previous lessons too. If you see me doing a fast run, that's probably what that is. And maybe I'll incorporate a bit of tapping into those 3 notes per string too. So I just want you to kind of have a look at the technique involved, just sort of see if it's a cyclic pattern that I'm putting, you know, that my fingers are going down at the same time there, and how it's, you know, I'm relating that to the minor pentatonic and how I'm sort of going into those tapping runs. So that's what I want you to keep an eye on here. Let's go. So I did quite a lot of things there. Basically, as you can see, I started in the first position of the G minor scale. So we started quite simple with some licks around there and sort of made my way up to the higher strings. And then this is where you could see I went to just our tapping lick that we'd learned. Just there, and I think I sort of moved it around a bit, so my fretting hand was moving around. We'll talk about moving the tap around in the next lesson, but I was just moving it around, and I knew that where I was tapping around here, that is outlining the shape of our 3rd position, minor pentatonic. So I sort of came around here. Started doing some licks around the sort of 3rd position there. I also was going up to the octave quite a bit of the 1st position of G minor. So I was up here quite a bit, again, doing some sort of similar tapping things. And when I'm tapping, I'm thinking about it in terms of the minor pentatonic scale. So here I'm kind of outlining that 2nd and 3rd position, moving between the 2 strings there. Also, some things I thought about was going back to that 3 notes per string thing. I used that scale a bit. I knew that I know the relative major of G major is B flat, because I used that trick of counting up 3 frets. So I knew I was in G minor, counted up 1, 2, 3, landed here on B flat. So I know that we're in B flat major, so we can play that 3 notes per string scale from here. So I was sort of playing around with that. I did a little fast tapping run following this, which I will break down in the next lesson. That's a really, really cool little tapping run there. So yeah, that's basically what I was doing there. I was thinking about how I can use the minor pentatonic to tap in the different positions in that, and also how I can incorporate the 3 notes per string. So that's pretty much what I did in that demonstration. Obviously, a lot of the licks I was playing were quite fast as well. So if you do want to go back, look at the tab, you can slow it down and really see what I was doing and understand, and try to play it at a slightly slower tempo, and then you can, you know, gradually speed it up and build up as you're going through. So have a go, play to the backing track. It doesn't need to be as, you know, speedy or complicated as that to start with by any means. You know, you can start really slow, just using like the first position and that tapping lick we learned. So. You know, go at your own pace. You know, it doesn't need to all be 100 miles an hour. So yeah, have a little go at that, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Okay, so now we're going to take that tapping pattern that we just learned and try a few variations that incorporate a bit of movement. Firstly, we're going to try moving our tapping hand, so this hand here. And to do that, we do the exact same thing we just learned, but this time we're going to be alternating between the 10th fret and the 8th fret on the E string. So if we start here on the 10th fret where we started, we're then just going to move our hand down. If I play that slow. Now, when I'm moving the tapping hand, I kind of like to move my whole arm, almost as if it's like a crane being pulled back and forth by the bicep. Try not to hold any tension in the arm though. We don't want to be like tensing our muscles or anything. We want to keep it relaxed, and we're just doing the movement by kind of swinging it slightly, like kind of like you're doing the robot, you know? So now let's try moving this onto a different string. However, now, so we're going to play pretty much the same thing. However, now we're going to be tapping the 11th fret on this string and then tapping the 8th fret. Now, this technique is exactly the same. The only thing that really changes when we're playing this on a lower string is we really need to think more about muting. You can use the underside pad of your index finger on your fretting hands to gently rest on the string below. So that's this finger here. So I've got the string pressed with the pad of my finger, and it's sort of flat enough so that it's resting and muting that E string there, because sometimes, you know, it can be easy to kind of pull off and hit that string. So if we've got it muted, that, you know, that's us covered. I also have the tip of this finger resting on the G string as well. So it's just kind of hung over enough so it's muting that finger, and that just provides some extra muting. And of course, we've still got our, you know, palm muting going on. I'm just like laying my palm sort of gently over the strings there. The key to good tapping is just making it sound really, really clean. So take some time to kind of focus on that, really getting the right hand position on your fretting hand so that you're, you know, muting those two strings and keeping, you know, the tapping nice and clean, basically. So now let's try moving between both the E and the B string. Again, the key to this is synchronizing your fingers so that when you tap on the higher note, your fretting hand is getting ready into position on the new string. So you can see as I'm moving between the strings, so I'll do the tapping lick here on the E string. Then my pinky finger is ready, and my tapping finger hit that B string at the same time. So then it's ready to be pulled off to. Just a little tip as well that some of you may find helpful. If you're finding the stretch quite hard and uncomfortable and you're finding some strings are ringing out a bit, you could try using a slightly more classical hand position with your fretting hands. So just shift your hand so that the thumb is on the back of the neck in the middle, and the wrist is kind of, you know, sticking out a bit like this. So this is not a requirement or anything though. The traditional rock guitar, sort of position can work well as well. It's totally fine. But some people just may find the classical position slightly more comfortable and easier to get the muting correct, especially when we go into the longer tapping runs in the future. So once you're comfortable with moving around on the strings, you can then start doing these, really cool kind of Van Halen style licks. Now, I'm going to be touching on building your own tapping runs. All we need to think about is kind of what we already know. We know the pentatonic scale, right? So we can use notes from that to build our tapping runs. And that's exactly what we've, did in this example here. So here we can see, as I said, our fretting hand is in the first position of the minor pentatonic. Just there. And our tapping hand is actually outlining this third position here, which is this. So that's what my tapping hand is playing there. So in a sense, I'm kind of playing two of the pentatonic positions on top of each other there, which can be, a little bit mind-boggling to think about. But once you kind of practice it, and if you know your minor pentatonic scale really well, you'll get the hang of it, and you'll kind of be able to build these tapping runs out of any position. But that's what I'm thinking about when I'm building these fast tapping runs I'm doing. It's all just the pentatonic scale, basically. And we can also do that with any other shape. Maybe we can play that in octaves as well. That adds this kind of really cool kind of weird effect there, which is cool. And another option is using the 3 notes per string major scale that we learned. So like I said, we're in the key of G minor here. The relative major is B flat. We can use that little trick to count up 1, 2, 3. Here we are on the B flat on the 6th position. So we can use this 3 notes per string scale here. And we can use this to create really cool, long, more complicated sounding runs. And basically what I'm doing is just tapping the next note up from the scale. So I'm my first position is outlining that, first position of the 3 notes per string, and my tapping finger is kind of outlining that next note in the 2nd position. So for this demonstration, we're in the key of G minor again, and this is actually based off of one of my original songs, Bulletproof Revolver. It's just we're in a different key. And we're going to start with a big, powerful strum on the G chord. And we're going to hold that for a bar. Then we're going to an E flat chord. And we're actually putting the 5th in the bass there with our index finger. So this is a regular E flat. And we're going to do a little bar across the 6th and the 5th string with our index finger, just to have that 5th in the bass. We're then going to a B flat chord, so we're just moving these fingers down. And then finally an F. And we're holding them for a bar, and then after a few times around, we're going into this cool groove. And that is basically what the backing track is doing. And whilst this is going, I'm going to be playing over a G minor pentatonic, again hitting that 3 notes per string scale, and doing a few longer tapping runs as well. I'm really getting some movement into my tapping runs here. So yeah, make sure you're paying special attention to sort of my technique I'm using, maybe some of the fast tapping runs. You might want to slow it down a little bit and listen to those longer tapping runs in slightly more detail so you can actually really hear what I'm playing. And yeah, that's what we're going to do for this one. So let's go. So again, a lot of the stuff in that demo might have seemed really fast and crazy, but if you really kind of break it down, what I'm doing isn't super complicated. It's all what we've discussed in the lessons. I'm using all of the notes that you guys already know. So remember, if there's anything you want to specifically learn, you can go back, really slow it down and learn at your own pace. So I started, as always, kind of in the G minor, pentatonic. Did a few licks there, and then we started doing some fast tapping runs. So I did a few sort of up here that we were kind of doing in the demo. Towards the end, I kind of did this kind of Van Halen moving thing where you're moving the tapping hand and then the fretting hand, sort of. Can't remember exactly what I did, but you're basically kind of moving one, then moving the other, and then moving one, and then moving the other. And it's, you know, just like I told you, you're kind of moving your whole arm kind of like a crane when you're moving your tapping hand, and you're just moving your fretting hands like you would normally move it on the guitar. So that's those licks. I did, you know, a few of those 3 notes per string ones that I was talking about. I did that one that we learned in the previous lesson. Something like that, you know, the... I did that one, and then I also took that exact same kind of idea and pattern, and I put it here in the first position of the minor pentatonic, actually using those. Right, do you remember right at the beginning of these lessons we talked about the flat 6th and the 2nd in the minor pentatonic scale to sort of create this. That kind of shape in the first position of the minor pentatonic scale. So I used those notes in that position and sort of did a very similar thing. So I'm using the exact same kind of fingerings that I was using in the 3 notes per string tapping run, but I'm using it in this scale instead. So it's always good to be able to take those patterns and, you know, of the hammer-on and pull-offs that you're doing and put them into different scales as well, so you can actually move them around. That's why tapping is like such a cool technique to learn, because although it sounds really crazy, but once you've got the actual technique down and you know how to build tapping runs, you can kind of just rinse and repeat the patterns. You're just moving like the scales, basically. So yeah, that's what I was doing there. What else was I doing? So again, I was just sort of using all of the positions of the minor pentatonic all over the neck, right from, you know, down here all the way up to the octave. I did a little thing where I outlined the 3rd position of the minor pentatonic here. I sort of outlined that position there, which sounded quite cool. And yeah, that's basically what I was doing. So I was just combining everything that we've kind of looked at so far, creating some more movements. But, you know, as before, make sure you go back, look at the tab, really kind of slow things down. I know when you see a solo that's, you know, quite fast, it feels quite overwhelming. You're like, I wouldn't be able to play that. But if you slow it down and kind of just make sure that you're understanding what I'm doing, you might not, you know, be able to play it straight away, but you can understand it in your brain where I'm getting all of those things from. So definitely go through, slow it down, give it a go. As just with before, when you're practicing it to the backing track, you don't need to be crazy or super fast. You can be, you know, super simple. Make sure you're really taking in what you're doing and you're understanding what you're doing and you're understanding all the shapes. You know, it doesn't matter if you're going this fast or this fast. As long as you're learning and you're understanding, you're doing a great job. So yeah, stick at it. Yngwie Malmsteen would use sweep picking to emulate what a violinist can do with their bow, traveling quickly from string to string in a smooth and fluid motion. The first thing to note is that you want to have a good pick for this. You might want to maybe try a slightly thicker and smaller pick, such as a Jazz 3 or something like that. These will help you glide through the strings a lot easier, as there's kind of less surface area and less give in the pick, so therefore there's less resistance against the strings. So now let's get into the actual technique of it. There are several important things to consider when you're first learning to sweep. So let's take a look just at the picking hand first. So don't even worry about the fretting hand for now. You can just mute these strings or something there. Now we're going to be starting small with a 3-string sweep. So starting with a downwards motion, we're basically going to let our pick fall through the strings and land on the string below, kind of like a controlled strum. So you just want to spend some time getting that technique down. And when you're coming up, it's exactly the same, but it's using more of a pulling motion, as if your hand was kind of being lifted by a string tied around your wrist, so sort of like that. You might find it also helpful to angle the pick slightly downwards on the down sweeps and upwards on the up sweeps. So it's actually kind of the side of your pick that's falling through the strings rather than it being flat against the strings. Again, this just kind of reduces the resistance and the surface area that's hitting the strings, so you'll be able to go faster. We only really want the very tip of the pick, as that just, allows it to fall a lot easier. So just practice doing that a few times. I know it doesn't sound the greatest, but don't worry, it will soon. Make sure you're not anchoring your wrist to the guitar as well. You kind of want to be quite free. We're going to be adding some palm muting later, but we want our, wrist to be nice and relaxed and loose, sort of, So we're not like really pushing down or anything. Okay, so now it is time to add in our fretting hands. Sweep picking is predominantly used to sweep through arpeggios, usually from chords which feature in the backing track or in the key of a song. If you don't already know, an arpeggio is basically the outline of a chord. So for example, if we take the open A minor chord, the arpeggio is this. So it's literally just kind of each string played separately. That's kind of the A minor arpeggio. So we're going to take this exact chord, this A minor chord, and we're going to move it up an octave. So we're playing it up here above the 12th fret. So it's still an A minor chord, the same position, but we're playing it there, and we can add in that bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the first 3 strings of this chord, and we have got these notes. Try to use the same fingerings that I'm using, as well, as this is quite an important part of the technique, which will become evident later on. So now the key to sweep picking is really synchronizing the hands together. So we really only want one string ringing out at any time. So as soon as a note has been played, we're going to then release that note. But don't take your finger like all the way off like this. We still want it kind of lightly resting on the string so that it mutes the note while the next note is being played. So my fingers are sort of kind of going like a wave, like they're, little Mexican wave. And the same thing on the way up. Another important technique is muting. You want to be using the fleshy part of your picking hands just here. And we're going to place it on the string. And basically what we're going to do is move that palm mute down the strings as we pick through them. So once I've picked the G string, my palm mute will follow that. So as I'm on the B string, my palm mute is now muting that G string there. So it's basically kind of following the strings down. When we're doing 3-string sweeps, we can kind of just rely on that lifting the fingers technique. But we definitely want to have our palm mute there as well to avoid any ringing notes. And when we get into the longer sweeps, the palm mute will come in very helpful. So don't forget that. So now let's play up and down this arpeggio a few times. So you're remembering that with your picking hand, you're doing that controlled strum, falling through the strings gently, and your hand is then being pulled up. Okay, so now that we kind of know what the technique is, let's make this into a little cyclic lick. So I always like to add a pull-off at the top of my sweep patterns to help with the turnaround. In this case, we're going to pull off at the 15th fret. So we're going to sweep all the way down 3 strings, then up pick the 15th fret and pull off to the 12th, and then up pick the B string. So our little up sweep there has a little pause to allow for that pull off. So, and that is just going to repeat, again, it's a cyclic lick, so we're just going to play that over and over again. So once you get comfortable with that, you can maybe even try shifting the pull-off every other time to the 17th fret. So get really comfortable with that little lick. Try doing it slow, and then maybe you can speed it up a little bit. Just remember to keep your palm mute there to avoid any strings ringing out. Okay, so now we're going to think about adding a different arpeggio into this. We're going to be adding the C major arpeggio. Now, all we need to do here is move our, the note on the 3rd string down to the 12th fret. So instead of this, we're now doing 12, 13, 12. And that is our C major arpeggio. We want to use this fingering as it keeps our ring and pinky finger free to add pull-offs and other cool stuff. And when we extend this sweep to 5 or 6 strings, this will definitely be the fingers we want to use for these top 3 strings. So it's better to get used to that shape now so we can extend the strings later. We've got that same pull-off at the top. You might find that you want to use your palm mute a little bit more as that finger, you know, the index finger moves quite quickly to the high E string, so it's not there to kind of mute that G string. So this is where you kind of really want to push your palm mute down a little bit to mute that G string once it's been played. So try that again, sort of speeding it up. Go super slowly at first, really focus on the technique and synchronizing your picking hand and your fretting hand so that they make contact with the strings at exactly the same time. It definitely would be a good idea to use a metronome or a cool drum backing track or something to practice this, to ensure that all of the notes are of equal length and they're all sounding nice and good and clean. So now let's try combining the A minor arpeggio and the C major arpeggio that we just learned together, keeping that pull off at the 15th fret. It's going to sound like this. I find when you sort of start to go a bit faster with sweep picking, you feel the technique in your hands a bit more. So maybe try going a little bit faster than you think you can, just to kind of really feel what that technique feels like in your sweeping hands. But yeah, you'll need to go slow to sync up your fingers, but to get that actual technique down, it might be a good idea to just sort of have some fun, see how fast you can get. So, okay, cool. Now let's try and add these two 3-string sweeps into our improvisation. So this track we're going to be playing over is in A minor again, and we're basically going to be just strumming these notes in semiquavers. So we've got, we have got two strums, and we're going to be starting on the A chord, going to C, to G, back to A. So that is going to be the chord progression that we're playing over. That just kind of repeats. So while I'm playing over this, I'm going to be going to those 3-string sweeps that we just learned, and I'm going to be doing them at various speeds. So I'll try to play them quite slowly, and then maybe I'll go a little bit quicker. I'll be playing some, some of the different things we learned with, like, moving the pull off. Switching between that A minor and C major arpeggio, and I'm just sort of going to be messing around mainly in these 2 sweeps. I might venture out, do some 3-string sweeps elsewhere, but that's what I'm going to be doing in this demonstration. So let's go. So what I was doing in that demonstration was similar arpeggios to what we just learned. So we've got that, A minor arpeggio here. And I was kind of doing that trading pull-offs thing with the 15th and 17th fret. And then occasionally I was, going between the C major and A minor. And then in this position as well, I know that here, this sort of, between the 12th and 15th fret, I know that's where the 4th position of the minor pentatonic is. So once I was done with my sweep, I'd kind of go into a 4th position minor pentatonic lick. So it'd be like... So that's quite a good way to kind of find a way to exit the sweeps. And I also just did a couple of variations on the 3 notes per string. I did this one here, which is stemmed from this arpeggio. It's kind of another variation of an A minor. And then I did this, which is a variation of a G major. I always think they sound quite cool together. So, but this here, this G major is the same pattern that we learnt up there. It's the same as this. We just moved that down here. This is a bit of a different pattern. This is using our middle finger, 3rd finger, and then our 1st to get a minor sounding arpeggio, which is really cool. So that's what I was doing there. And basically I was just finding ways, wherever I was sweeping, I was thinking, okay, how can I then take this back to the minor pentatonic to continue my solo in an area where I know I'm really comfortable and I know loads of licks in, basically. So, when I was doing that, I knew I was making my way down here. So So I'm then back in the first position of the minor pentatonic to continue the solo from there. So yeah, that's basically what I was doing. And go back through, have a little look through all of the tabs and stuff, see if you can, kind of wrap your head around it a little bit, see where those major arpeggios and minor arpeggios live. And yeah, give it a go yourself. Just, start with the ones we learned. And you can do them quite slow. This backing track, although it's quite a fast BPM, you can actually do these sweep patterns quite slowly to this. You don't need to do them, 100 miles an hour. Start slow, and when you feel more confident, build up the speed and try it in a few different keys. Okay, so now that we've got the basic technique down, we're going to extend these and learn some 5-string sweeps. These are my favorite type of sweeps, as I find they just fit in your hand quite well, and they're really easy to get your head around, especially as a beginner learning to sweep. So we're going to start with the C major arpeggio that we just learned. So if we go back to our chord shape, our open chord shape, we're going to take that shape and, again, just like we did with the A minor, we're going to move it up 1 octave. And we've got this shape here, so we have to change our fingering slightly. So the root in this sort of these C major patterns, the root note is always the first note we play. So it's right here on the A string. We can see here that by looking at the chord, we can see here where we got that 3-string sweep from the top 3 strings. But we can also see that the next 2 notes on the D and the A string are here, on the 15th fret of the A string and the 14th fret of the D string. Now, the technique we're using is exactly the same, a controlled strum through the strings with the movements coming from the elbow. And you're releasing your fingers after each note has been played. So we've got that controlled strum going down all 5 of the strings and back up, like your hand is being pulled up by a piece of string. And your fingers are kind of falling down the sweep with you. So you're releasing them. Once you've played them, they get released. You'll definitely have to incorporate more palm muting in these longer sweeps, with the palm really following the movements down the strings here. A cool piece of equipment that you may want to check out is this thing, which is called a fret wrap. This one is by the company Groove Gear. And basically what these do is they kind of work as string mutes. They're really, really good if you're going into the studio recording or anything sort of like that where you want to have a little bit of extra muting power. Some people call it cheating. I call it being resourceful. So this will just basically help you with your muting, so it'll stop all the strings from ringing out. And it can be really good when you're sort of learning the technique, just to be able to hear if you're doing it right. But just make sure that if you do have one of them and you are using it, that you're also practicing your muting a lot without it. Make sure you're taking it off every now and then, just to make sure that you are still muting well and you're still learning that technique, because you don't want to learn to be messy. It's just helpful if you're going into the studio or something and you want all of your playing to sound super clean. So now we're going to go back to that sweep that we just learned, the C major, and we're going to try adding a pull-off again to help with the turnarounds. But this time we're going to extend the pull-off and hammer on from the 12th to the 13th, and then to the 15th, then pull back off to the 13th and the 12th. And then we're going to sweep down the B, G, and D strings. And then turn around and do the same thing again. Sweep down all 5 strings. I'll just do that slow a few times. And up to speed, sounds like this. Okay, so now we're going to take this C major shape and we're going to turn it into a C minor shape. So to do this, we're going to flatten the thirds. So the note on the D string moves down a fret. So it's now on the 13th fret of the D string. And the note on the high E string also moves down a fret to the 11th fret of the high E string. So if we play through that slow, it sounds like this. And the hammer-ons, you know, stay in the same place. So we've got that hammer-on to the 13th and then the hammer-on to the 15th. And just like we did with the scales, make sure you're really thinking about learning the shape and the pattern of these rather than the, you know, exact frets that it's on in this demonstration. So while you're learning this shape, you know, practice it here in the C minor. But then also try moving it around. So maybe try doing it from G. And make sure you're kind of, you know, maybe A. Make sure you're just really getting that shape in your head. So I've just shown you one option for the sweep picking shapes there. And this is, like I said, this is the shape that I predominantly use. It is the C-shaped arpeggio. They are called this as it mimics the shape of an open C chord. And you can see it's the same, you know, like I said, it's the same position but up an octave. And this comes from the caged system. If you don't know about that, you don't need to worry too much about it for now. As you've got this one shape, but basically, you know, I love this shape for 5-string sweeps as I find it just fits my hands the best. I like the fact that, you know, the root is on the starting string, so it's very easy to find. And I also find because you end it on your index finger, you have a lot of options for pull-offs and extensions on the turnarounds there. However, it's definitely worth exploring some other shapes and seeing what suits you the most. And just sort of, you know, just, yeah, figuring out what works for you, because every guitarist is different. You want to find kind of your signature sound, your signature licks that make you sound like you know, you the player you want to be. For example, maybe you prefer the A chord shape, which is, you know, the same as our open A chord. So your sweeps would outline that. You can see I'm a little rusty with that shape because I don't really use that very much. So yeah, have a little experiment and see which works for you. So maybe have a little experiment with which shapes you like best, get super confident and comfortable with them. Now, although it's definitely worth experimenting with different shapes, you don't actually really need to properly learn every single possible shape. Like, you can play through a shape, see if you feel comfortable. If you do, great, use it. If not, move on. All you really need are 2 or 3 arpeggios that you can sweep really, really well, and that is definitely enough. You know, no one will notice you're playing the same ones. Trust me, it's what I do. So yeah, have a little play around, see which one you prefer, and just make it work for you and your playing. So now I just wanted to touch on how you know which arpeggios to sweep over partially any backing track. So you can actually utilize these in your playing. So say you're playing over an A minor track. As a basic rule, we can use any of the chords or triads which occur in the A minor scale, which an easy way to think about it are the same of those that occur in the C major scale as well, because they are relative major and minor, like I explained earlier. So for this, we've got A minor, B diminished. You don't really need to worry about diminished sweeps for now until you're a bit more advanced. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, and G major. So that's a lot of letters to think about, I know, but it's actually really only 2 shapes, the major and minor arpeggios, which we just learned. So as a starting point, we can, of course, use the A minor arpeggio, which is the root of the A minor backing track, and that'll sound great. And of course, we've got those 2 positions. We have that first 3 notes per string position we learned. But we also have the longer 5-string sweep that we learned, which is using the C shape, but it is starting, it's an A minor sweep, so we're starting on A. And then we've also got that relative major, which is C. Remember, we count up 3 frets from the minor, so we've got A, 1, 2, 3, and we're on C. So we can also play the C major scale. And And there it is, starting, with the 5-string sweeps. So that's already 2 arpeggios that we've got without, any thinking at all, really, because it's just the root and the relative major. So let's have a go at combining these to make a slightly longer sweep picking run. And this will kind of be a good basis of building even longer runs in the future. So firstly, we're going to do a C major arpeggio in the C shape with the little pull off at the turnaround. And then we're going to move to the A minor arpeggio, which is also in the C shape, but we're starting on the A fret, which is here at the 12th fret. Now, this might seem like quite a massive jump, but we just really need to break it down and practice it slowly. And this is a good way to sort of practice any lick that has a big jump in it. So we do this by playing the first shape up and down, and then simply just playing the very first note of the next shape. And basically what we're training our hand to do there is just to get that movement quick. So you're sort of training your wrist to kind of move and make that jump. And you, again, start really, really slowly until you've kind of sped it up till you can do that very first bit at full speed. And then you can just add as much of that, second position on as you want until you're comfortable. So maybe you just want to add, it up to the top. And then you can add the pull off afterwards. So you're just gradually building it up until, your hand feels comfortable doing that jump, because it does seem like a really, really big jump to start with. But it's just practicing that hand movement. So I'll just play it through at full speed a few times. Now, when you're ready, you can just basically tack an A minor pentatonic blues run on the end of it, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, we're in the A minor scale, so we can definitely, use the A minor pentatonic. We can use that C major run, anything we want. So once you've got a couple of these little sweeps and little sweepy licks in your arsenal, you just kind of, rinse and repeat them. You don't really need to know all the sweep patterns in the world or anything, because, that's a lot. So you just really need to start with a couple that you really, really like, and you can gradually add more, and you'll find that, it's a lot, once you've got the technique down, these new shapes are a lot easier to learn. So let's have a little go at incorporating these slightly longer runs into our playing. Okay, so for this demo, we're going to be in A minor again. And we're starting with this cool little Van Halen riff type thing. So we're starting on the open A, using that open A string as a little pedal. And then we're doing this little cool slidey thing from the 15th to the 17th fret, using the kind of notes in the C and D chords. And then we're kind of going to do a C over A type thing. Again, using that open A string as a pedal. And then we're going to go to C and to G. So together, it sounds like this. And then we've got like a little pre-chorus bit, which is just moving from the C to the D. And then we've got our chorus section, which starts on the open A again, to the C, to the G, to the F, and then to the E. And that is what our backing track is doing. So while I'm playing over this, I I just want you to sort of have a little look at the 5-string sweeps. I'm incorporating them in, and have a look at how I go into and out of those sweeps. So I'm going to do a sweep and then just have a think about what position of the minor pentatonic I might be in. So I'm going to be adding little blues licks on the end just to connect them up nicely. So keep an eye on that, and let's get into it. So in that demonstration, I was using a lot of those 5-string sweeps that we were talking about in the lesson. So I was using that C major one quite a bit, sort of following it with a little pull-off run there, using that 3 notes per string scale that we were, the C major one. So the top of that. And what I was also doing was I was following the chords a little bit. So in the backing track, it kind of has this, where it goes from C to D in the kind of pre-chorus bit. So I was outlining that in the chords. So I did a little sweep on the C major, and then a little sweep on the D as well. So I was kind of following that chord progression, and I did that as well in the chorus section. As the chords are A, C, G, G. So it kind of followed that. It went from the A minor to the C major, and then it went to a G, and then I went back to a D. So I was kind of following the chords in the backing track and basically sweeping the arpeggio of whatever chord was playing in the track. And then it sort of, really highlights that chord and brings out the chord progression. And I was kind of combining that with a little bit of the A minor pentatonic. So I was going to, the first position here quite a lot, especially for these big bends. Because I think those big bends kind of really mark sections well. So when the chorus came in, I went for a big bend there because it's sort of like, it's quite powerful, leading you into a new section of the song. And used a lot of the A minor pentatonic. Again, I know that this sweep always lands me in the 4th position of the minor pentatonic, so it's easy for me to kind of go into a blues lick after I've done that sweep because I know I'm in that position. So that's what I was doing in that demonstration. Go back, have a little look, slow parts down if you would like to see kind of the exact patterns I was playing, and have a go to the backing track yourself, see if you can start to follow these chords a little bit, and give it a go. So when I was learning these techniques, what I found difficult was that I didn't actually really know how to combine them together and incorporate them into my improvisation and soloing. So what I think about now when I'm soloing is basically how everything is related back to the minor pentatonic scale. That is our main building block that we always use to come back to eventually, as usually most guitarists feel super comfortable with the minor pentatonic. So if we can find a way to relate everything back to that, things will seem a whole lot easier. So when you're practicing these techniques, you want to try to end them with a bend or like a pentatonic run or something, because that will bring you back into the scale that you're really, really comfortable in. For example, if we take that C major 3 notes per string scale, we will end up in the 3rd position of the A minor pentatonic. So if I do a little run up there, you can see that I ended up in that position. So whenever I do a run up the 1st position of the 3 notes per string scale, whatever key it's in, I am always going to end up in that 3rd position of the minor pentatonic. So I know that I can build some licks based on that. Or maybe you could start practicing with a blues lick or something, then going into a cool technique, such as if we take the 4th position of the E minor pentatonic, we can go into a G major sweep. So I'm in the 4th position here. So I know that whatever key I'm in, when I'm in the 4th position of the minor pentatonic, there is a major sweep available right there within that position. So it's just all about finding how these pieces of the fretboard puzzle fit together. The main thing is basically knowing some very basic theory of what key you're in, where the relative major is, and what a couple of chords are within that key that you can build arpeggios from for sweep picking. So just another example, if we're in G minor, I know we can play the G minor pentatonic, say we're in the 1st position. And then the relative major is B flat major. If you're not sure, just use that trick of counting up from G, 1, 2, 3, B flat major there. So we can use the B flat major 3 notes per string run for some fast legato, maybe build some tapping licks from that. So here, going from the 1st position. And as we know, the relative major is B flat major. That's 2 arpeggios that we already know that we can use for sweep picking there. We've got the G minor, as that's our key, and B flat major, as that's our relative major. So, I'm sort of up here in the 3rd position. Maybe I can sort of move to the 4th position of the G minor pentatonic. And then I've got that major sweep within that 4th position. And, then we can carry on, do a little blues run in the 4th position or something. But you'll get to a point where you can just kind of see it on the fretboard. You can see where each of the sweep patterns and the tapping patterns fit within that minor pentatonic. And you won't even have to think about it or the theory behind it. It's just basically all about knowing where you are and how everything to connect. Like I said, you want to piece that fretboard puzzle together. This will take a little bit of time to get comfortable with, but just start slowly and, simply. I know I've been playing a lot of fast things there and it might seem a bit intimidating, but just take it at your own pace and, maybe just try using the 1st positions or something. Don't worry too much about the, extended positions of the 3 notes per string in the minor pentatonic. Then just gradually add more stuff until, you're combining techniques together like it's nothing. And you'll find a few runs that you really get used to. You'll find some patterns and positions that you'll be able to whip out super quick. And if you're smart and creative with it, no one will notice that it's all just like the same stuff and that it's all coming from the pentatonic scale. So my biggest tip is definitely looking for patterns and shapes and focus on learning these rather than the specific frets, as this will really ingrain them into your muscle memory and it'll make it so much easier to change keys and put these techniques into different scales and everything like that. Also, make sure you're practicing to backing tracks rather than just a metronome, and you're kind of practicing combining things together, musically, so that you're really getting a sense of how these can be used and the rhythm and the timing of where these techniques fit best within a musical piece. And it's just a lot more fun to be learning with a backing track instead of just this, ticking metronome, which can drive you absolutely crazy. So now let's take everything we've learned and do one more final improvisation. Okay, so now in this demonstration, we're actually going to be using a backing track that we've played over before, right early on when we were started learning about the minor pentatonic, the A minor pentatonic. As I want you to see kind of how everything's progressed and what you've learned and what you can now, include in your solos. So you started off with just using that first position of the minor pentatonic, but now we're going to be taking that same backing track and extending it using all of the techniques that we've learned so far. So if you remember, this started with the verse section that went A to G to D. And back to A at the end, and that repeated a few times. And then we had that cool little slidey chord progression from A to C and then G to C. With that cool little muty thing at the end. So that's the backing track we're going to be playing over. And while I'm playing over this, just keep an eye out for all of the techniques that we've learned throughout this course. So, you know, the minor pentatonic, the little extra notes we learned, the blues notes. Keep an eye out for them, and the 3 notes per string climbs, some tapping runs, some, you know, sweeped arpeggios, and just sort of how I kind of incorporate it all together and, you know, try and follow how I relate it back to the minor pentatonic as well, and kind of end everything with like little bluesy, cool, rocky licks within that minor pentatonic. So let's give it a go. So what I did in that demonstration was I started in the first position of the A minor pentatonic and sort of did a few of those dual bends there. And then climbed down that little chromatic thing using that flat 5 blues note. And then we went up that first position of the relative major, C major. And then I did that little tapping run that we learned down that C major scale. And then I think from there I was sort of around the 3rd or 4th position of the minor pentatonic, just going through that a little bit. And then I kind of went, at some point, went back to that higher octave of the first position of the A minor. Kind of used those flat 6th and 2nd notes to, you know, get a few runs there. Did a run down as well. Was it? Kind of using the top string of different notes from the different positions of the 3 notes per string major scale over the neck. Was that little run. And I also had a few sweeps there. I was trying to kind of follow the chords in the backing. Kind of did an A minor sweep, that was what key we were in. And I think I did a little G major sweep in there as well. And then back into the 2nd position of the minor pentatonic. So basically what I was just thinking about there was, like I said, how everything relates back to the minor pentatonic and how I know where sweeps sit in different positions of that and how I can always get back to that scale I'm really comfortable with. So if at any point I feel like I'm lost or I'm not sure what I'm doing, I know that I can just go back to, you know, the kind of safe base of that minor pentatonic and then go out from there into different runs and then come back into it. So yeah, that was what I was doing there. So make sure you go back, give it a go. Like I said, you've played over this backing track before when we started learning the A minor pentatonic. So maybe record yourself or something and see your progression that you've gone through. Definitely slow some things down in that demonstration that I did if you want to really delve into it and again really see where each of these techniques live within that minor pentatonic, and start building your own solos, improvising over the backing tracks, and doing your own thing, discovering your own sound. Have fun with it. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this course. I hope you've learned something that you can take away and use in your own playing. If you want to see anything more from me, I'm on YouTube at Sophie Lloyd, and Sophie Guitar _ on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook as well. Basically just Google Sophie Lloyd and I'll come up somewhere. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you on the next course. So this guitar that I am using today is a Kiesel guitar. It's actually my artist edition Kiesel guitar. And it's kind of got a black limber body. It has that kind of warmth and resonance of mahogany, but it's way, way lighter. And I find it, kind of way easier to play with. The cool thing about Kiesel guitars as well is you can, customize them to be exactly what you want. The strings I'm using, 10s to 46s, Ernie Ball regular slinky. And then this little thing right here, you might have been wondering what that is throughout the lessons. This is a fret wrap. This particular brand is Groove Gear. I know the brand iBox also do some cool ones as well. And basically what it is, it kind of acts as like a string mute. So it's as if you've kind of, got your hand like that over the strings. And it just kind of helps when you're playing to make you play a little bit cleaner. So, you don't have to worry about muting quite so much. It's great when you're in the studio, especially, and you're like recording and you want something to be super clean. This is a really, really good thing to have. Just make sure that, you do occasionally take it off and practice your muting as well. You don't want to, lose that and start playing messily. This is just a really good tool to have in your arsenal if you need it. Yeah, like I said before, some people call it cheating. I call it being resourceful. So yeah, just get one. They're super cheap as well, and I think they make a big difference to your playing. I've also got a Diodario tuner on my headstock. This one's great because it's super small. It's kind of inconspicuous rather than those, big ones that look like there's like an alien arm coming out of your guitar. So yeah, you always want to play in tune. This is a great little thing just to clip on, have on there. Doesn't take up much real estate, and it's really good. You'll always stay in tune. And then a little bit about my tone as well, and something that I think a lot of guitarists should definitely think about because it's great for writing and stuff. Today I am using, I'm basically going through a Focusrite interface so that I can connect it to my laptop. So what I would usually do is I think having something such as Logic Pro or Pro Tools, some sort of software like that is really, really good for guitarists to have, because you can write, you have like this little, especially on Logic, you have this little thing where you can create a drummer. So you can have like Kyle and import this kind of MIDI drums and have that looping around, and you can practice to an actual drummer, which I think is really, really beneficial. So yeah, I think if you invest in some sort of software, recording software, so you can record yourself and listen back as well, it'll really increase your playing and give you a lot more ideas like creativity. Maybe you want to start writing a few things as well. You can create little jam tracks and stuff. And the software I'm using is Nolly Archetype. So it's by Nolly, who is the bassist in Periphery. And yeah, the company's Archetype. You've got some really, really great tones, lead, clean. You can basically design your own amps and do it all through Logic. And that's a really cool way to do it. And it's, it's not like you have to lug around all of these big amps and everything. So that's what I do mainly to get my tones. I do also have, some of you might have seen, I have a diesel amp, which I use a lot of and I absolutely love. It's diesel VH4. Going through a Palmer cab, or sometimes like a Marshall 12x4 with V30s speakers. And that's a great sound, you know, when I can lug around my big amps when the gigs aren't too far away or I've got a car or something. So yeah, that's kind of what I use for my tones. I like to have a lot of different options. So yeah, I really encourage you to sort of have a little play around, try out some different gear and find out what works for you. You want to be able to develop your own sounds. You know, you don't want to copy someone else's, you want to sound like yourself. So definitely have fun, have a play around with some different gear, go to a guitar shop, experiment with a bunch of stuff and yeah, see what you can find. So the final thing I wanted to touch on is actually something that I believe that all modern guitar players should know. And that's how to use social media to get yourself out there and promote yourself as a guitarist and start, you know, a career. So many people got their start on social media from guitarists such as Matthias Asteto, who began posting videos on Instagram and has gone on to play for people such as Jessie J and Bruno Mars, all the way to, you know, Justin Bieber, who began on YouTube. So you definitely want to be getting on as many social platforms as you can. So just some tips to build that up. Firstly, you want to kind of clean up your profile a bit, or maybe like make a new one for your artist page. You want to pick a good name, ideally what you want to be known as, and you want to keep that consistent over all social media platforms. So, you know, if someone Googles that name, all of your socials will come up. Also, a good profile picture and a good cover photo, like a high quality photo, goes a long way. Have a little photo shoot or something. Maybe think about having a link tree as well, so you can have a link that people can click on to get access to all of your social medias and follow you everywhere. Just make it as accessible as possible for people to find you over all platforms. Then basically just promote yourself as much as you can. Consistency is the key here. Upload as often as you can while still making, you know, quality content. And this will kind of vary over different platforms. Personally, I usually aim for 2 videos a month on YouTube. That's how many I feel I can get done and still produce like a really high quality video. And sort of 2 to 3 a week on Instagram and Facebook. And that's just kind of the reel. It's quite short form content. And then every day or every other day on TikTok, but I'm not that good at keeping up with that. But that's my aim anyway. Also, video content is essential. With the rise of like TikTok, especially, social media is really, really pushing video content as much as possible. You've got, you know, Instagram reels and everything like that. So uploading this video content consistently is what's really going to help you go viral. Also, just milk the shit out of everything that you can, so you can really keep that upload schedule and upload as often as possible. So, for example, when I film a YouTube video, it'll take me about a week or so to write and learn a kind of shred version. So I'll film the actual YouTube video in, you know, landscape, but I will also film a bunch of vertical content for Reels and TikTok. So I'll take like the verse and then I'll take the chorus, and that's, you know, 2 videos for Instagram and TikTok there. And you can, you know, really use, so it can be like the same song, and you're just using this to kind of cross promote all of your social media accounts. So you're getting the most out of the quality you make for different accounts. Also remember, in 6 months later, you can repost a couple of TikToks and Reels. People's attention spans are very short, so they really aren't likely to remember that you already covered that crazy solo from that extremely obscure band that you know. Now, remember, TikTok and Instagram Reels really do not have to be long at all. They can literally be like 15 seconds. I do something on my Instagram called Metal Mondays, and I can write and film about 12 of these over 3 days, as they're very, very short. So that is almost 3 months of content right there, filmed in just 3 days. And often it's actually the simplest stuff is what goes viral. So, you know, not everything has to be, you know, Through the Fire and Flames solo. You can do simple stuff. You can do Black Sabbath War Pigs or something like that, and that's what's gonna really grab people's attention. Another tip I have is you want to find something that makes you unique. So, for example, I started doing shred versions. The Do on YouTube plays on Omegle all the time and has this mysterious kind of faceless vibe. You've got Mrs. Smith, who dresses up as an old woman and shreds the shit out of a guitar, which is really cool. So just think outside the box. Like, maybe you could start doing like, I don't know, drum and bass songs or incorporating like techno stuff into your music, or maybe you can start a series on TikTok where you're like playing guitar in weird places, like in a supermarket or something, or maybe you have like a really specific playing style that is really cool and unusual, such as like Tim Henson, for example. Just be really, really creative and have fun with what you're doing as well. Just enjoy making your content. Also, another tip is just let people get to know you as well as your music. People really like to relate to people and get to know them. That's kind of the difference between influencers and kind of the traditional celebrities, is that the audience feels like they actually really know you and connect to you and you're their friends. So this makes you a lot more likely to return to, you know, your page, and they will be invested in what you do and support you, buy your CDs and come to shows and everything like that. So make sure you kind of show up on stories, you know, actively ask people what they want to see, involve them in it. Maybe vlog your outings if you have like a cool day at the studio or something. Make sure you know, do a little vlog of it. Maybe show your pets, you know, do a quick chatty story about your day or something. It doesn't have to just be music related. It just has to be you, you know, you just want to be authentically yourself, and that will come across and people will love you for it. And the final tip is don't wait. People are so good at making excuses like, oh, when I get that new camera, I'll start because it can be higher quality, or when I finish writing that song, or maybe they're, you know, too embarrassed or anxious to put themselves out there in case their friends kind of take the piss a little bit. But you've really just got to try and get over that hump of putting it off and just do it. You do not need super fancy equipment. That will come with time. My first video looks like it was actually shot on a potato. It is awful. But you know, I started somewhere and now I have the cameras and stuff. When you've been doing it for a couple of weeks, the anxiety will definitely diminish as well, and you'll have a big fan base before you know it. So just do it, don't wait.